I'm your host, Grayson Brulte. Welcome to another episode of SAE Tomorrow Today, a show about emerging technology and trends in mobility with leaders and innovators to make it all happen. On today's episode, we're absolutely honored to be joined by Adam Hussemann, Manufacturing Quality Chief Engineer, Honda, and Jason Rounds, Assistant Vice President, Maintenance Operations Support, TTX Company. On today's episode, we'll discuss SAE Baja, what goes into being a leader, what the experience is like, and the most important thing, how do you plan for uncertainty, and what are the hard decisions that you have to make in order to win the race? And after you win the race, how does all the skills that you acquired and learned during that time help you in the real world as you join industry? We hope you enjoy this episode. There's a lot of great takeaways in it. Gentlemen, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you. I'm excited to have a conversation today.
Thank you.
It's great to have you gentlemen here because today is all about SAE Baja, or you could say it's SAE Baja Day here on Tomorrow Today. If you gentlemen were explaining SAE Baja to a friend or a colleague, how would you explain it? Jason, let's start with you, please.
Yeah, I would explain it as this is a place where you can take everything you're learning as an engineer and you get to put it into a real world experience. So, all your different mechanical engineering classes and stuff like that, everything you're doing in a book, now you get to put it into a practical sense. You get to build and create something. And then you get to go out there and the competition will show you all the things where you made bad assumptions. One thing with Baja is you don't really know the exact terrain that you're going to be designing for. So you're always trying to balance how much over do you think you need to design without adding too much weight to your car? And it's always a balance. And so when you get to these competitions, you might, have extremely wet weather with lots of mud that can add 200-300 pounds to your car while you're out there. Did you design for that? Can you handle that much weight on your car when you go over a jump or when you hit a rock? So I think this is really, it's that chance to really get feedback, and it's a lot of fun doing it. And so you get that feedback and you get to have fun.
When you're planning for the unknown, it reminds me when I speak with folks at DARPA and they do these very different challenges for military applications. They don't tell you where you're going to deploy it. They just say that you're going to deploy it. Is that a team effort to say, okay, we have to engineer for this or engineer for that, or wait, we don't want to over-engineer for this or over-engineer for that? Is that a team that comes together to make those decisions?
Are you talking about on the individual teams? Yes. So I think different teams, they show up and they have different targets or goals they want to achieve. I remember several years ago out in Oregon, there was a team that showed up and they had a car on like 32-inch light truck tires that weighed a ton. And it was, the bottom of its roll cage was the top of most other roll cages. But their team goal was, I want to win the rock crawl. Like, they weren't fast, they weren't maneuverable, but they went out and they achieved their team goal. They won the rock crawl. They annihilated the rest of the competition because of what they did, but it was that team said, this is what I want to do. So I think when each team comes together, they have to determine what is their goal of their car and their of the activity and the vehicle they want to build. Like Jason talked about, do I want to handle muddy conditions or do I want to plan for dry conditions because I think we're going to Arizona to the desert? Or, when I was in school many, many years ago, we did all three competitions. And one of the competitions back then used to be amphibious. So we had to have a car that was capable of being amphibious, but still be able to compete when we went out west to a desert environment, which made it challenging, for us. So then you're trying to decide, okay, what gear ratio, what tire size, what top speed do I go for, but still have low end grunt to pull a trailer or do a towing event. So these are all compromises. The team has to decide, what do I want my car to be? Is it a Swiss Army knife, or is it going to be the best of one thing and I'm going to give up on other items? And those are decisions each team has to make.
And I think that's exactly what happens when you go into the real world and start doing your job. I mean, there is never a clear in engineering exactly what you need to do. You always have to make compromise. It's either it needs to be more reliable than you want. Are you going to sacrifice reliability? Are you going to improve your cost model? You're always looking at how do you adjust those. And Baja, as Adam was saying, gives you that opportunity to start doing that. How are you going to design? What's important? What's your goals? And that carries right over into your career when you start as an engineer.
Let's stay on that theme, Jason. Do you think that compromise is one of the main skills that you learned and other students learn from going through Baja?
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty, I think that's a big thing that you learn is compromise. Or another way I say it is some is compromise also is really understanding how to ask or investigate the questions that you might need to answer to come up with your design requirements. So, when we went to our first Baja event, none of us had ever been to a Baja event. So, we're doing searches on the internet to figure it out and stuff like that. So some of the things that we thought our goals were and our compromise we were making, well, we had poor inputs going into what we thought we were doing because we didn't really understand the requirements. And so as you get out there and you start to do that, you go to your first event, you start understanding a lot of things, but then that event site might change to a new event. So, you're refining and understanding your requirements, also trying to make your compromises to make sure you're going after, what's important to your team and where do you want to be in the competition.
Is there a prediction market for where folks think that the next Baja is going to go that the teams follow and track?
There's a pretty good guess that they can find out where the event's going to go from year to year. There's several sites that are kind of on a 3 or 4 year rotation. We normally have a deserty, dry type site. There's normally a site out east where it's typically more tree, mud type event. So, teams kind of have a rough idea, but you still don't really know until you get to that event site. Because even if we go back, like Rochester, this is what their 6th or 8th time hosting the event. Every time we go there, they change the event site. They change the track and the conditions and the maneuverability event moves from one area to another. So they even try to mix it up. This year in Ohio, we're going back there and we're moving all the event sites to a different part of the facility. Even though it's the same facility, it's going to be a different appearance to the students. So they can't take what they saw in 2023 and say, okay, here it is 2026. We're going to have a car that was good in 2023 because the event sites even mix things up. So it all comes back to what are the assumptions that I'm going to use to make the design criteria that I want to build the car to.
It's really smart. I'll use the term you're keeping the students on their toes. I think that's probably a good way to summarize that. I have to ask because I've seen this on the news. I haven't experienced it in person, but in some desert environments, flash floods happen. From an engineering perspective, are they looking through all this? I play with the Google Vertex database, and they have the Google Cloud in there for weather. And you can see some really funky weather patterns. Are these teams now starting to look, okay, if we're going to go to Ohio, we're going to go to the desert, or we're going to go to the Northeast? Are they looking at weather patterns that might historically have happened to prepare their vehicles for those environments?
I would hope so when they're making those assumptions of what tire should I show up with? Am I going to show up with a mud tire or a desert tire? I think, 2 years ago, Jason, out in Arizona, we had rain, like in ice, and that's normally not happening, right? So then teams started flipping out because they showed up with the wrong tire, and the event rules are you run the tire you go through tech with. You can't change your tire pattern just because the weather condition changes. So there was a lot of teams the day of tech that when they had to lock in what tire they're going to choose, they were monitoring the weather, trying to say, did I really pick the right tire for what it's going to be a day from now or 2 days from now? Right. So I think that goes back to, how much effort does the team want to put into studying the condition? If you go back to the true sense of what Baja was meant to be, it's supposed to be a single seat all around car that somebody can buy and go have fun with, right? Well, when you say that, just like an ATV or a side by side, there are side by side people that ride in the mountains and there's side by side people that ride in the desert, yet they buy the same side by side. So you have to think about that kind of all around viewpoint. What it is I want to accomplish?
And I think that really comes out with the teams that if you're designing for all three events, you have two events within 3 to 4 weeks of each other, you really have to kind of go after that objective, right? You have to kind of make a car that's just good all around. If you're designing for one event or for one event within a competition, then you can have different constraints, right? And so those are all things that go into what is your objective as a team? Where are you trying to be the top team in the US and go to all three events and have the best average score across all of them? Are you trying to win one particular event and you're just going to be the best of that? You're really going to study the weather patterns. You're going to, you're going to optimize your tires to be exactly for your suspension and all your geometry. Or are you going to be able to have adjustability where you could switch your tires because it might be in the desert in the, out west, and then you're going to be in the water event, so how do you optimize all your steering and your geometry and stuff like that to be able to take two different size tires? So it really goes all the way back to what is your objective as a team and what are you trying to do?
There's a lot of planning that goes into this, but then there's, the teams or students, and they're young, and I'll be frank, they have opinions. How do the teams all get along? The team, is there a captain that emerges to say, okay, this is our North Star, or how does that go? Because at such a young age, some people they're set in their ways at that age and they're hard headed. How does that work?
Yeah, so Adam and I were both captains of our teams when we were students a long time ago. I would say I went to RIT, and so there's unique, it's unique people that want to do the Baja, that want to give up their time and volunteer and do all this work for the chance to go compete in a competition. And so, but you do need someone to lead. And when you're a leader on a team, someone has to make those decisions, but you also have to figure out a way to motivate people that you're not paying. They're not necessarily required. A lot of them don't get any college credit or anything like that. So that was something at a very young age that actually helped me later in my career, is how do you motivate people when you really have nothing, you don't have any control and you have no compensation, and you have nothing. And so learning that as a leader, I think helps all the teams as they go into be future leaders at their corporations or their companies, is because you'll have a lot of experiences in work where I have to work with other departments, other groups that I have no linkage to, except for we work at the same company. How do I motivate them to want to do, to collaborate on something that's important to me, but maybe has no benefit to them at all, but they control a little piece of the puzzle that I need them to do something so that my area or my project can be successful, right? So it really sets you up when you are a leader of a Baja team, is to really learn how to do that motivation without having, I'm a teacher, you have to do this to get a grade to pass, like there's a different motivation. I'm going to go do that because I have to do it or I'm not going to graduate. But Baja is all typically a majority of it is all volunteer, and it's countless hours and a lot of work if you want to be successful.
Adam, is it the art of persuasion as being the captain? Is that is that what this comes down to?
Part of it. I mean, going back to your first question, how do I explain what Baja is to people? I tell them that you're running a business, right? And and you can see the successful teams that have that kind of mentality where they have a very kind of structured team, and versus a team that there's a domineering personality that basically says, this is what we're doing. We're going to do it like this. You're going to do this. And then that team, you can just see the chaos at the event because they're not working together for that singular goal. Where if you look at successful teams, there is that designated leader, like Jason said, you have to be able to get people to do what you need to do to accomplish the goal, but it's getting that team to all buy into that vision and that goal at the end. The domineering teams, they don't work, right? People don't buy into the end goal. They're there and you see them walk away, you see frustration. You know, this is a very frustrating event, right? You work a year, most teams work for a year to build this car, and they show up at the event and it's a 3-day competition to highlight what you've worked on for an entire year, right? So it's a very stressful activity. So I think there's a lot of attributes that team members walk away from the Baja event that is very important when you go to industry that you don't learn in school, right? They don't really teach you how to be a leader. You take leadership classes and there's all this philosophy, but you don't get to practice it. In these competitions and being on these teams, you get to practice and kind of hone your skills of what does it take to be a leader and to guide a team to be successful.
I would say, both of you gentlemen went through the Baja experience and you continue to participate as technical inspectors, and you're heavily involved. Do you just know in your gut, or you get a sense of, okay, chaos, coordination, chaos, coordination? Do you gentlemen see that when you go to these events with some of these teams?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you definitely, it's easy to pick up on the ones that are just running around crazy, that, just there's no calmness, it's just craziness. And then you see the ones that are well put together and very organized. And I would say one other thing I didn't say earlier, but that makes a good team is a very diverse team. I think the teams where we're talking about engineering, Adam and I are both on the engineering side. But I think our teams that brought in, people from the art side, people from the business side, we had a very cross-functional team. Adam had a cross-functional team. That, it first off, it challenged you when you were doing things, because you're always used to speaking engineering talk. And, when you go do a design presentation, it helps if you have that business mindset, or you're going to do business presentations. So when you're going to get sponsors and talking to a finance person who, hey, I want money, so having a very diverse team makes you, it also adds to that, having a well-rounded team, and makes you successful. But yeah, it's very easy to spot.
Adam, let's put the captain hat on for a moment, sir. So you're the captain. Then do you go handpick your team, say, okay, we need a designer, we need an AI scientist, we need a graphic designer? Or is it just, hey, I want to do this, and okay, this is going to be your role, it's going to be your role, and then you try and figure it all out? What's that like?
Yes. The simple answer is yes. I went to the University of Central Florida. At my school, it was a volunteering activity. It was not related to any kind of classwork. We got no credit for it. So part of it was who showed up on Saturday mornings. You had to work with the people that were there, that were engaged, that wanted to be there. But then there would be times that we would go out and try to get those other viewpoints or specialties. Like we tried to get people that were in business and in marketing to help us with our sponsorship. So we would go and engage with the business school and try to find avenues to get people that filled those needs on our team, right? So yes, the answer is we get both, right? You get the people that just show up because they're like, they see the car or they see the activity and they're like, I want to do that. And then there's others that, hey, we have to go pull them into this activity and help sell them on why this is a good experience for them, to help prepare them for the future, right? So the people that show up and want to be there, they're great. Sometimes they're the more difficult ones because they're kind of set, this is what I want to do, right? It's going to be this way. And you have to work through that. And then you start realizing people's personalities and what their skill sets are. And you're trying to entice them with what they want to do, and motivate them to be part of the team and fill the needs of the different groups of the team, right? Everybody comes in, the first thing they want to do is drive the car. Well, some people should drive the car. I'm 6'3" in school. I won't say what I'm now. I was like 240. I'm not going to drive a car, right? I'm a big guy, right? I'm going to slow the car down. So you have to get people to realize, hey, this is a competition as much as it is, I drove the car at the school, but when we showed up competition, we had our small, skinny, 100-pound person that we put in the car, because that was more competitive. So it's balancing all those personalities to get to that end goal, and motivating each person to get what they want, to buy in.
To me, it seems, Jason, that, and I'd be curious if you've seen any patterns, and Adam, for you as well, if you've seen any patterns of a team that runs it like a business and somebody makes executive decisions and says, okay, you were the right physical size and shape to be the driver, you're going to be the driver, and that's what we're going to do. Have you seen patterns of teams that say, okay, we're going to run this like a business, we're not just going to run this like a bunch of kids doing an engineering project? Have they had greater success? Have you seen any patterns like that?
Oh yeah. I mean, I think most of your top teams are running it like a business. And there is a balance to, like, hey, I'm going to, I do see some teams where I think they could be picking a driver that maybe is just because of their size and like they're a good driver and they let them drive for like almost the whole endurance. But I would say it's still the rare. I feel like most of the people are picking the best driver out of the hardest working people on their team, so like, at my school, we had the same thing as like I'm 6'1", I was, 175, 180 at the time. I wasn't probably the normal driver, but we would have, we would pick the who was smaller, but they had to be people that showed up and worked. If you hadn't worked on the car, we didn't want someone going to crash the car just because they were the smallest driver, but then they didn't understand how hard it was to work all year and build that. So I think you'll see that, there's a business sense, but you're also not like, I'm not going to go buy a driver. And I think most teams are kind of in the same, because you do so much work to let someone drive a car that doesn't really experience the pain of what it took to get there. Is kind of like they might go a little harder over those jumps, or they might push a little bit in that corner, and they're, oh yeah, I'm willing to break the car, but they're not the ones that's going to fix it. So we kind of had to balance that.
The teams that I see that run it more like a business, I think the students get more out of it, right? The benefit to the student when they go out to the real world, go get their real job after college, that is the teams and the students that got the most out of the event versus a group of guys that got together and threw a car together and showed up, right? Because they didn't get the full aspect of what it is to be in the business world. So I think you can definitely see, my she'll be 14 in June, and she's coming to the competition in New York with me again. And I've been bringing her since she was 10, and I'm trying to teach her, women can lead teams, right? I take her around. Back then there was a female leader on the Michigan team, and she was very good, very organized, ran it very much like a business, had a lot of buy-in from her team. And I wanted to empower my daughter and show her the skills that you can learn from doing these different things. And we've had a lot of conversations about what makes a good leader, and how does that work, and how do you motivate, and how do you make decisions, and that kind of thing that came out of this. So I think the teams that are more organized in that kind of viewpoint, they definitely show better success, because they have that kind of singular goal of what they're trying to achieve.
It's a powerful life skill. At the end of the day, that seems like there's a lot of life skills that are being learned during these competitions. I mean, you're fortunate enough that you can take your daughter and expose her to it. How are other students getting exposed to this? Is it, I'm going to go old school, is there a bulletin board in the cafeteria? I mean, going old school, going back to when we were in school. How do students learn about Baja today?
So that's I would say it's probably changed a lot with the social media, from when Adam and I were, recruiting people and stuff like that, to how they're recruiting now. So, I mean, I would just say, like, at least structurally, I think most people in the engineering programs are kind of aware of it, right? Because it's usually the team is housed in an engineering environment. So it's housed in the mechanical engineering department. So I think those people, usually it's pretty easy word of mouth, it's on the screens, you maybe have the cars on display in the engineering area, right? So I think it's very visible for there. I think back then the challenge is how do you get those people that are not the engineers to want to join your team, and how do you entice them? And that's where you have driving days where you take the old cars out and you're driving them in the parking lot, and people are walking, able to walk over and see it. And then you're doing different things, that you're putting it on display at different college events and stuff like that. So and I would imagine there's different media now that they're using also to to get that message out to people. But I think that's usually where we had the hardest time is getting it, outside of the mechanical engineering area.
I'm curious, Adam, if you look at historically some of the greatest race car drivers in history, NASCAR, Formula One, various different types of racing, they started in go-karts as little kids racing go-karts and work their ways up. And I'm thinking this, okay, I want to win Baja. Does any of these teams go to the local go-kart track to say, okay, who's winning every race? Come on, we want you to be our driver. Does that ever happen?
I don't know too many teams that bring in an expert driver per se, right? Most of them, like Jason said, we all work year round. I can't tell you how many hours I used to spend in our Baja shop working on our car. It's a passion of love, right? And you want to experience that and enjoy that. The Baja cars, they're super fun. They're you put 100 cars on a 1.5 mile track going across different terrains. It's exciting, right? You put one of those cars by itself, it's boring, right? The cars aren't super fast by themselves, but it's the excitement of that wheel to wheel going across the terrain, doing it better than somebody else that brings the excitement to it. So it doesn't take an expert driver. It takes someone that has a passion and wants to do it. And I think that's really when you talk to people in Baja and you get new schools and you get them to an event, it's that passion that comes out that they're just like, I want to do that. That's fun and exciting, right? You know, I don't want to pick on formula because formula is its own thing, but it's a different type of passion for that, right? If you want that wheel to wheel, it's Baja. If you want that high technology and you're looking for that expert go-kart driver that can cut it, a hundredth off a second, you need that in formula because that's that kind of event where, Baja, it's a 4 hour endurance race. It's not, 5 laps fastest lap, right? In 5 hours or in 4 hours, it's don't tear the car up, right? I need to make, I spent hours welding this frame together. I hope that every one of these welds last every jump, right? It's kind of going through your mind. So it's just a different viewpoint. You don't need those expert drivers that are a tenth of a second faster because at the end of the day, the laps, they're close, but they're not that close over 4 hours, right?
Do you swap out drivers during the race day?
Yeah, most teams will swap. Some teams will do every hour. Some teams do at a fuel stop, an hour and a half. It's kind of up to each team, But we kind of make sure they at least have one driver rotations. But well, we might ensure more if it's like out in Arizona a couple years ago, it was like 100 and something degrees, and we were making sure they were swapping drivers pretty consistently just from a hydration and heat, and not doing anything stupid. You get out there and by the endurance race, it's day 3. The students have been working long hours. They're jacked up on caffeine and Red Bull and everything else and adrenaline. So it's keeping them, being smart, with the car and it's there to have fun, right? It's a competition, but it's the experience and the fun and competing.
Jason, endurance racing is tough on the body. And now, Adam brought this up, and now I'm curious. What type of physical exercise training do these drivers have to go through? Because if you think about the vibrations, the sweating, there's a lot of, it takes a toll on the body if you're the driver.
Yeah. I don't know about today's drivers. I feel pretty confident. It probably hasn't changed much. Typically, driving is the last thing you think about. You're working so hard to get the car done and completed to meet everything that, we didn't do a lot of driving training. My final year, we said we work countless hours to shave an ounce or 2 ounces out of a wheel or a brake caliper. Why aren't we all running 5 miles a day to shave a few pounds off our drivers, right? And we did start doing that. And then it was the muddiest event that year in Milwaukee, and there was like 100 pounds of mud in our car, and we all said, why did we all run 5 miles every day, to train to shave a couple of pounds in the first corner? You had more of that. So I would say I don't think there's a lot of investment on the majority of teams of coming, doing the driving. The other thing that's really big in Baja, which makes it different than any competition, and again, I go back to it, really prepares you for what happens in when you get into industry, is that in Baja, you have 4 hours to race, and you can do anything you need to fix that car. So now, that your car breaks out there, it's how quick can you bring it back? You got no computer, you got nothing to run, a program of FEA to say, hey, this is how I need to fix it, or this is what's going to work. You basically have to be using engineering common sense to put something out there to fix it. And how quickly can you get it and get it back in? And again, it's making that choice. Do I put 2 tubes in there to fix this bent corner, or can I get by with 1? I got 40 minutes left. Do I spend an extra 3 minutes here and maybe lose out on 1 lap, or do I, but I could break down again, right? And so that's one of the things where you don't get that in your other events is like in Formula, when you break, you're done, you're out of the event. But this gives that aspect, because as soon as you get into like a manufacturing environment, anything like that, especially like at Honda, the assembly line is down. Adam doesn't get to take, well, I'll be back in 3 weeks with a solution on how we're going to fix this problem. He's got to figure out something now, make a decision, because he's got thousands of people that are standing there doing nothing, and you're paying them until he figures out how to get them back online. And so that's really where you get a lot of that experience in the Baja environment, and prepares you for making decisions under pressure without having all the facts or all the details, to make 100%. I'm 80% accurate. yeah, I can accept that today because there's only an hour left.
Uh, is one of the life skills that individuals that participate in Baja is it decision making? Is that one of the life skills that comes out of this?
Oh, 100%. Like Jason said, people that go through the Baja experience and have to think under a very stressful environment, their car breaks in endurance, or they're trying to get through tech and they've got an hour left in the day and they have to make educated decisions and go with it, right? You see people who get stuck in, call it analysis paralysis, where they can't make a decision. I need more data. I need more data. That's the engineering. That's the typical engineer. I need more data, right? I want the 100% answer that it's going to be perfect. And I think what Baja teaches you is you can't do that. If you do that, you're not going to get to the competition. You're not going to get the car through tech. You're not going to get the car back on the track because you're going to be staring at it. And you see teams that have that leadership that are in that kind of engineering mindset that I have to be 100%, and they get stuck to the side and their car just sits there and they're all staring at it, kind of trying to calculate and figure out what they should do versus teams that use that engineering mindset and have the basic assumptions and can just move forward and go, right. And like Jason said, I work in Honda manufacturing. I'm here in a plant in Alabama. You know, we build a car every 55 seconds. So every 55 seconds the line's down, I'm losing a car. And it's we have to make quick decisions that can hopefully solve the problem. And then the second thing that comes out of that is you make a quick decision, you have to also be able to recognize when I make a wrong decision, right? And not just try to force something to keep going. Same thing in Baja. If you make a quick decision, which is great, right? A leader should make a decision, but a better leader will say, "I made a wrong decision," and will stop it and revert course quickly once they identify it was the wrong decision. And I think those are all life skills that college doesn't teach you, right? They don't put you in that stressful environment that you see some students when they get in that stressful environment, they lock up and they don't know what to do. It's kind of scary. And you have to kind of go kind of mentor them and kind of get them thinking again and moving forward. And I think that those are the skills that it's hard for people to realize that it's important that they get, right? And that's why I continue to support Baja to this day, because to me, I feel like I wouldn't be where I am if it wasn't for those experiences and those leadership skills and that problem solving and making quick decisions and moving forward. I attribute a lot of my career to the Baja program and going through the different SAE events that I did. And I think that's why I continue to support, because I think it's important for students to have that opportunity.
It's very smart. Jason, have you seen certain leaders over the years that are better adapting to situations, a broken part, a personality, a changing weather? Have you seen scenarios where leaders have emerged that are better to adapting to a changing situation?
Yeah, I mean, I think you definitely see that the leaders from teams that kind of have like, what would I say, like kind of where they have a program that every year you're taking like a new leader on, like the most senior person. So you're kind of mentoring people. It's kind of like almost like a small business, right? Where, you start as a junior engineer, you get to senior engineer, you get to a manager. The teams that run these 4 and 5 year programs, you see that those people are much more, they're typically calmer under pressure. Now, there'll always be the outlier where it's a personality thing, but in a general state, I would say that those teams, they've prepared their people because they got to see good leaders, 2 or 3 years before they're the ones at the helm having to make those decisions. And I think that helps the best. You do have some programs out there where it's like a senior program or a junior senior program at a school. You can definitely see that sometimes you'll see a great leader on that team, and then maybe the next year it won't be so great, or 2 years later. And I think that just comes from that you're kind of starting off fresh almost all the time, right? You're not getting to build that rapport on the team. So,
Adam, do you see industry companies recruiting from Baja because what you two gentlemen described are invaluable skills that you can't teach in school, but you're learning them in the field, you're learning them hands-on, and you're under stressful environments. And for industry, that goes, okay, decision making in a stressful environment. Check. Okay. You have 4.0, not interested. Oh, you can handle stress? Okay, come on in. Are you
Exactly. You see a lot of, I mean, you see it this year. You see more and more companies coming to the SAE programs. And I don't want to say just Baja, but all of them teach these type of skills in stressful moments, right? And I think companies see that and they realize I need students that have gone through this experience because it happens every day in real life in business, right? Not just manufacturing, right? But it happens in every kind of company where there's stressful moments where you've got to think through and not lock up and just stand there kind of white faced and I don't know what to do. I don't know what do I go left or right, right? And people that go through these stressful moments, they learn from it, and it if they really learn, they look at themselves and say, "Let me analyze what I did. How can I make myself better to deal with these situations?" Because it happens on a daily basis. At least for me around here, you know, building cars every day, there's a lot of very stressful moments where things don't go right and we have to quickly react and make decisions. So I think companies see that and see that coming out of the Baja program, especially, the Baja programs that have long standing kind of that migration from freshman to senior year, where you see the students get better and better at dealing with it. I know there's several companies that they feel the same way I do, right? They're there for those students because they, even though they might not be 4.0, they're going to perform better than a 4.0 student in most applications because they've gone through that decision making and that stressful environment where a 4.0 student, you know, they I call it again the analysis paralysis. They can't make a decision. I need the data because it has to be perfect.
Yeah, I would also say that I think companies are realizing that the Baja Pro, we could be designing a lawnmower. We could be competing lawnmowers against each other. This program is set up to basically train people on all the core things, whether you're going to go in and design robots, you're going to go design electric cars, you're going to design diesel cars, you're going to design brake beams, you're going to design brake shoes, radiators. I don't care what you're doing out here in the industry, but the skills that you're learning from here is how to deal with people, working under stress, making decisions without having 100%, the data, being able to be a team player and being able to, not have to be you as number one, but how as us as a group do we become successful. So I think that's where you're starting to see some of these that are, maybe not the traditional sponsors to SAE that are coming in here because they're realizing that this is a core basis that you're learning here that you cannot get in school. And it applies to any industry that you're going into, and we like to focus on the auto industry, but this applies across. I'm in the rail industry, and there's multiple people in management positions at my company that went through the SAE programs. Lots of my suppliers that I run into doing designing, parts and stuff like that for the industry went through the program. And that's why I stay involved, is because I get much better products, experience, reliability, and everything with across the whole industry. So I don't have to just be that I'm hiring the person. You're basically making a better industry when, we have problems and we need to come up with solutions, and you call that, that supplier, and that supplier is, oh yeah, I did the SAE program. You just know right then, like, this is going to be a good experience. We're going to figure it out. And we're going to get there, and they're not going to get stressed out. And, oh, we can never fix it. So I just see that a lot with the people that have gone through our programs.
Summarize it is that the individuals that gone through the programs, they come out with life skills, and those life skills are invaluable. I'm curious because life's changing, the world's changing, technology is going at Mach speed, I'll say it that way. How's technology changing the competition, in your opinion, Adam?
I think it's doing two things. One, you see teams that are doing a lot more designing of components that when I was doing as a student 25 years ago, we weren't able to do because we didn't have the technology of CNCs and things like that at hand, right? There were CNCs out there, but they weren't as easily attainable, right? But technology is driving those costs down. So teams are able to be more creative with their designs and push their designs because they're able to use technologies that can make the parts or make the components. You see teams that have electronic CVTs and teams that are outfitting their car with data collection and radios sending information back to the team in the pits and the paddocks, and you see all this technology that is moving the designs closer to the edge, sometimes for the worse, right? Some of the teams, they take the data from last year and they try to apply that data and they design to that same load characteristic. And this year's load characteristic is different, and then it fails, and then they're frustrated. So sometimes they don't put a lot of common sense to it. I'll just leave it at that. But they you see technology more and more in RP and parts, right? We're seeing more and more RP parts that we never saw before, and just those different skills that come with those technologies that they're able to produce things that they shapes and geometries that were not feasible several years ago.
Jason, what are your thoughts on how the technology is changing the competition?
Yeah, I mean, I go back to the fundamentals is that the way we've set up the program, it's giving you the skills to go across all these new technologies, right? But I agree 100% with what Adam's saying is we are seeing people do challenge things that would be much more challenging without the technology and some of the manufacturing process and stuff like that. So they get to try a lot of those things, and it's kind of a complete circle, right? They try more of those things. Sometimes those work out. I would actually say there's more learning when they don't work out. They fail. And then it's like, wait a minute, I don't have that. I only made one of them. I don't have that equipment here to make a new one. So now I got to come up with a solution. And I got to go back to the basics of a grinder and some steel or welding something up. So again, it helps like when, it's a learning experience. It's always that full circle. So, but yeah, I think that it's been beneficial to see people push on some things that never would have happened before.
Adam, Jason, this has been an insightful conversation. I've learned a lot, even inspired me. What would you like our listeners to take away with them today? And Adam, we'll start with you, please.
I would hope your listeners understand the collegiate design series and they will support those series, right? I think they're hugely important for the young generations of engineers that are coming along to grow their total scope, right? You can learn in school, FEA analysis and whatever the coursework is, right? But it doesn't apply it necessarily. And I think the collegiate design series, and I'm a Baja guy through and through. I think that experience brings the coursework, puts reality to it, and then it brings in the other skill sets that are hugely important in making someone successful in a career. And I hope people hear this and go, hey, I want to get involved. I want to make sure I'm helping the next generation improve and get better and support, the programs either through volunteering or going out and working with a local school and trying to help them see the benefit and get those schools to build their programs up. There's lots of different ways they can get involved with these series and these programs to help that next generation of engineering. So we keep pushing engineering and strengthening where our companies are going, right? That's why I bring my daughter out so she can see it and she can understand what it is and look at what she can learn from it, right? I joke, I don't joke, but 2 days ago she had a science experiment. She had to make a balloon car, where you put the balloon on the car and it's got to push across the floor. Well, she comes to me with a sketch of a Baja car, right? Because that's what she knows. And she's like, Dad, I want to make it look like this. And I'm like, well, I really appreciate that, but we're making a balloon car. It's not going off road. So why don't we lower it down? And, we had conversations about, but she had a great idea with the roll cage. That's what she used to kind of contain the balloon to keep the balloon from taking energy away as it moved across the floor. So we incorporated that into it. But, it made her think about what she had seen at the event. She was trying to apply it to her balloon car. Again, that's just that whole STEM and growing that mindset of I have to solve a problem. I have to look at the problem. I have to make assumptions about what I'm trying to achieve, and then let's work to make it happen.
That's special. Jason, what would you like our listeners to take away with them today?
So I think there's probably three categories of listeners. I would say if I'm talking to people that are out there in the corporation, I would say being involved in supporting collegiate design series is important, not just when you need to hire someone. This is something that takes years to develop. So, being active, being sponsors, and supporting this even when you're not in the hiring phases, will improve what's available when you go to hire people. And even if you're not hiring them, someone else that you're going to be coming in contact will be. It will have an impact. So make sure you're staying involved and you're supporting these activities. When it comes to the people that have been going through this, your alumni who might be hearing this, is we have, probably over the last 25 years, we have about 60 to 100 people that are really core that go every year to the events. And we keep involved because we know what this event did for us. And I would just ask them to be thinking about, what did it do for them and how can they stay involved, whether that's, volunteering at the individual events in your areas, whether it's getting involved as a national tech inspector, design. There's all different things that you can do to keep giving back. If this was beneficial in your life, that's exactly why Adam and I have been doing it for so long, because we really felt that this was a beneficial program. And to the students, if you're doing one event, challenge yourself to get to 2 events. If you're doing 2 events, challenge yourself to get to 3 events. If you're doing 3 events, maybe think about bringing a second car. Look at it. There's some international events. There's always everything. The bigger you can make your team, the more people can get involved and do things, the more parts you can design and build yourself. It just keeps challenging you, and it will better prepare you for when you get out in industry. I cannot stress how much time and effort you put here will pay dividends for the rest of your career. It is definitely a compounding effect that you will have on the effort you put in now. It might not seem it when you're working 50 hours on a car in a week, but I will tell you, the people that do that work, everyone I've seen in their career, it has paid a lot more in dividends.
I'll summarize this way. To the listeners, support CDS. The leaders of tomorrow are actively building the future at CDS. Today is tomorrow. Tomorrow is today. The future is SAE Baja. Jason, Adam, thank you so much for coming on SAE Tomorrow Today.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to SAE Tomorrow Today. If you've enjoyed this episode and would like to hear more, please kindly rate, review, and let us know what topics you'd like for us to explore next.
SAE International makes no representations as to the accuracy of the information presented in this podcast. The information and opinions are for general information only. SAE International does not endorse, approve, recommend, or certify any information, product, process, service, or organization presented or mentioned in this podcast.